This is Naina Kalu, for anyone that isn't aware. Naina Kalu is a British artist who works out of Action Space. And she is the first learning disabled, meaning developmental disabled. So she's autistic and she's mostly nonverbal. She's the first artist like that to ever be up for the Turner Prize in the UK, which is
Amazing.
absolutely incredible. The Turner Prize, every year, four artists, four contemporary artists are up for this prize. And it's like a really high accolade in the UK to be up for the Turner Prize. And so it feels like a really monumental moment that's happening right now. And it gets announced on the 9th of December who the winner is. So everything is crossed for Naina. But Naina makes these incredible, huge drawings, often in pairs, and she'll work on them at the same time. So she'll make a mark on one, then she'll make pretty much the same mark on the second drawing, and then changes her material, and then does it again and again. And she'll work on them for about 2 days, and then they're finished and a new one is started. And I've known Naina now since like 2012. I've put her in so many different shows, and she also makes these really incredible wrapped pieces. But she always has this kind of repetitive circular motion that comes into her work. So her wrapped pieces all have things wrapped again in the circular motion. So where the exhibition is on in England, in Bradford at the moment, it's until like February. She has a whole room dedicated to her work of these wrapped and drawn
Oh,
pieces, and they're
good.
absolutely sensational. And she is such an incredible artist. I love spending time with Naina, and she has so much energy and loves all bright colors and is always dressed in bright colors, has fabulous nails. So I just want to raise awareness of Naina because, like Marlon Mullen having the show at MoMA at the end of last year, beginning of 2025, it's like a really important moment. Like these artists are like finally now we are seeing
Hmm.
them having these incredible shows in museums and galleries, being seen as artists in their own right and not being sidelined, not being put into education spaces or community spaces. Like this is important. These are artists. They deserve the same spaces, the same care and attention as everybody else. And can we please have more of this?
Hi there. It's nice to meet you. It is cold. There is snow on the ground, at least around these parts, but the show must go on. Welcome to Folk Artwork and Friends. I've had a really great show in store for you this month with a really, really great guest. But before we get to that, if you are listening to this on the first Friday of the month, which is when these new episodes drop, this first Friday on December 5th from 5 to 8 p.m., you can catch me and artwork by my friend, self-taught artist Renisha McCoy and Canadian folk artist Jackie Bradshaw at Mainframe Studios. Thanks to the open studio of the extremely talented Ashley Mary. For the first Friday of the month, Mainframe Studios in Des Moines, Iowa, one of the nation's largest spaces for artists and creatives with over 220 open spaces, open their studios so you can see, mingle, purchase, and talk to the artists who are there. I am so excited and so appreciative of this super kind and amazing Ashley Mary. And I hope that you can come and see some of the artwork that I will be bringing from the Folk Artwork Collective as we make our debut at Mainframe Studios. I hope to see you there. Speaking of kind, talented, generous, wonderful, this month, I am delighted to talk to gallery owner, curator, producer, champion of self-taught, disabled, and overlooked artists from around the world, the one and only Jennlifer Gilbert. Ever since I first met Jennlifer years ago at the Outsider Art Fair, she always has been super kind and helpful to me, someone I look up to as a person who does not have a physical gallery space but continues to do amazing stuff across the globe. And as I navigate this world of self-taught and outsider art, Jennlifer is someone I keep going back to and helping make sense of it all. Jennlifer has been in the field for over a decade and shares with me some of the ways that the art world can be more inclusive. There's many, not just one. Her journey to some of the most prestigious private collections of outsider artwork in the world, as well as her experience working with Japanese ceramicist Shinichi Sawada. I've always enjoyed chatting with Jennlifer, but the one thing that I love the most about doing this podcast is getting to know my friends better and better. Thanks to everyone for listening. I hope you enjoy the show. All right, we'll try that again. Jennlifer, thank you so much for joining me here today. I am absolutely thrilled for you to be my fourth or fifth guest now. And one reason why I want to start by giving you a little compliment. We've known each other for at least 3 or 4 years now. First meeting at the Outsider Art Fair. I went to the Outsider Art Fair for the first time in 2021. And I must say, as a wide-eyed, what in the world am I getting myself into? But I love this place. It's the greatest place in the world. Little small town kid from Iowa. There were a handful of people. Most everybody I've met at the Outsider Art Fair is great. But like you were one that was so kind to me and so like willing to just give your time and me to ask all the questions that I wanted to. I'm like, whoa, who's this Shinichi Sawada guy? And what do you got here? And I just want to thank you for always being so kind. And I feel like over the past couple of years, our relationship has grown a little bit and we've been more and more communicating. But I'll never forget the first few times being at that fair, just how excited I was to see you and how just kind you were with your time. So thank you so much for that.
Welcome, and I'm happy to be here to chat to you today.
Yeah, great. So one thing that I've really enjoyed about doing this podcast now is that we like this is maybe a problem in the art world or all of our friends. We'll see each other at a fair or a gallery and it's like, hey, how are you? Good. Hey, gotta run. I gotta go talk to this person that's gonna interested in buying this piece. So I don't feel like I know you, but I don't know you that well.
Mhm.
So could you tell me you're a curator, you are a consultant for artists with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You're such an advocate for getting inclusivity in the art world. But can you tell me a little bit like how you I'm so fascinated how people sort of made their way into this world. Can you tell me
Mhm.
a little bit about how that happened?
And I thought we would also start, whenever I give a talk, I feel like it's really important that we should visually describe ourselves for anyone who might be listening who isn't able to see us. I work with a blind artist. So for me, just to say, my pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman in my early 40s with red hair, with a blunt fringe, and I'm wearing like a fluffy jumper today. And maybe you could describe yourself too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am a white male. I used to have reddish hair. It is now graying on the sides. It's a little short. I've got a beard with a little gray in there as well, some red glasses, and I'm wearing a white striped shirt with some red and a black undershirt. And my pronouns are he, him. I'm in
Perfect.
my late 30s as well.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
So yeah, a little bit about me briefly. I trained as a graphic designer and illustrator at university. When I was at university, that's when I started finding out about outsider art. So there was a book in the library that no one had ever taken out, which was called Raw Creation by John Mazels. And obviously no one in a graphic design university would probably ever look at that book. And I don't know why I looked at that book. And that's when I instantly kind of fell in love with the world of outsider art and did a dissertation about it. I then did a foundation in art therapy and a master's in art health and well-being. So for me, the power of art in people's lives to kind of improve their lives, to kind of help them heal, to help with their well-being, that is something that's of utmost importance to me and something that I feel like art is really important for that. And whilst I was doing my master's, I was working with schizophrenic artists, which
Mm.
was absolutely fascinating. When I finished my master's, I went to be the manager of a national arts charity that worked with people outside of the mainstream. So people who were socially isolated, people in prisons, people with mental health issues, with learning disabilities, all sorts of people that were just classed as outside of the mainstream. And through that arts charity, I put on exhibitions in mainstream spaces, in big galleries and museums. We did professional development opportunities, all sorts of different things, large scale and small scale. But that charity had worked with like 2,000 people. And I always felt like I was never supporting people in the way that I wanted to support them, which is in a
Mm.
very kind of one-to-one, what do you want to do sort of way. So when I set my gallery up in 2017, I worked with a much smaller number of artists, and I really like talk to them or their families or their support workers or the studio they're part of and be like, what do you think this artist wants, or what do you want? How do you want me to talk about you? How should we describe you? What's your identity? All these sorts of things. So I work with those artists very closely. Obviously, the ones in England, it's a lot easier for me to do that,
Hmm.
but I do work with artists all over the world. And then I work with other artists, disabled artists as a producer. And then I also work as a curator in a freelance capacity, specifically regarding disabled and self-taught artists and neurodivergent artists. So kind of that is me in a nutshell, and I do various different things, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about all that. I did not realize I also have a background in graphic design. I'm curious though. You said that like nobody had touched this book before. Were you? I went into graphic design in university because one, I had no idea in the world what I wanted to do with myself after I had graduated. I knew I had always loved art. I did not know what I wanted to do with art, but I'm like, all right, graphic design. I can make money doing that.
Mhm.
Like I had actually told one of my professors, like, what am I going to do with an art degree? Like I can't make money doing that. And he's like, well, you can. But so when you found that book, like, do you feel like you were searching for something else? Like, or was this like a spiritual awakening almost?
Wasn't searching for it. I specifically selected the course that I did, which was at St Martin's. If people in England will know the University of the Arts, which is in London. I specifically chose that particular course because it was so broad. So I did an art foundation in art and design and specialized in visual communications. And so I went into this course because it wasn't a strict graphics course, like it was quite a
Okay.
broad course, and you could do whatever you wanted really. And my own personal work is like stitch based work that is all text based. So I would often stitch text into things, and it was always about bringing to light things that people don't really want to talk about, but in a very subtle way. So some of my work was about death, some of it was about child abuse. So all these things that people kind of gloss over sometimes, and I
Hmm.
was subtly kind of raising awareness of it and trying to raise awareness we should be having these conversations. And so when I did focus my dissertation on outsider art and its place, and that's how I got to meet John Mazells from Raw Vision magazine, Roger Cardinal, who did the 1972 book about outsider art. I got to meet Henry Boxer, who's a British art dealer, James Brett from the Museum and Gallery of Everything. I got to meet all these British people and other people from around the world when I was doing that. And I think my course tutors were probably like, what the hell is this? What the hell is this world that you're kind of delving in?
Right. Right.
How has this got anything to do with graphic design? And they were like, should you not be on a fine art course? And I was like, it's totally fine. So yeah, that was probably always a bit like they didn't really see where I was going with it. And probably in that moment in time, I was like, I don't know where this is taking me, but this is really fascinating. And I'm
Hmm.
also, I love how important art is for these people, and like they compulsively have to do it and like dedicated to it night and day. And like for me, that was really interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think often that if especially well, I should say people might know by now, but you are based just outside of London.
I live in Manchester, so
Men
it's
live in
north of
Manchester. Okay.
London.
Yeah. So we're going international here.
Mhm.
And thank you again for our time difference for figuring this out. But so you've got to meet like all those amazing people, like you said, Roger Cardinal, sort of like the figure in outside art. But I do feel like, especially like for me in Iowa, like if I were to show any professor like a book on outside art, they'd be like, "What is wrong with you? Like, what is this?" And which is why I absolutely loved when I'm teaching my art history classes and even my graphic design class that I teach today, like showing that because I do think it is way easier to connect with these artists as opposed to
Hmm.
Van Gogh. Well, not even Van, but these like fine artists, these masters of that everybody knows. I always ask my classes like, which artists do you know? And of course, it's your standard
Hmm.
Leonardo and Michael, like the Ninja Turtles, we call them in class. But so I do feel like these artists connect so much more. I want to ask you about your show that you just got done. Your second home this year was Philadelphia. Is that right?
It did feel like my second home.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, there's a collector and owner of a gallery there called John Ullman, who's from Fleischer Ullman Gallery. And he was out of town. So I just had the keys to his house and was able to just stay surrounded by beautiful art in his
Oh my
home. Really beautiful
gosh.
Frank Jones, built trailers. Um, just incredible, incredible works that I just love spending time with. And he wasn't there, and he was like, "Here's the keys." So like, it did feel like a home because I was living in someone's house, which was really lovely for me.
That's fantastic. That is, oh man, that's incredible. Because what I was going to say was you had mentioned when you are putting on the show, and the show was incredible. And again, I think you are like a superhuman because you're either in Philly, you're back home, you're in California, you're all over the place. And what I loved watching you put together the show was, like you said, you had the artist there with you. Like you
Mhm.
were curating a show. I'll let you talk a little bit more, but Look Everywhere, a show with a ton of progressive art studios. But you had the artists with you, I think, as curators, and I've put on a show or two, luckily. It's like, oh, I'll just take that piece, or you're kind of picking, but you were actually in. So can you tell me a little bit about your idea for this really incredible, like amazing show that you put on, when you had the idea for it, and how great it was just working with those artists and pulling it off?
So the shows in Philadelphia, so I was approached by Haverford College and Center for Creative Works, which is a progressive art studio in Philadelphia, to be brought on as a curator as part of this bigger project called Look Here. And they wanted to put in a grant to the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage. And they got this huge grant, which allowed for two exhibitions, a book, which is due out in November 2026, which will be the first ever book about progressive art studios across America. And it
Awesome.
has artists writing in it, academics, I've written in it. It's going to be like a really well-rounded book about like the history of progressive art studios and where they're placed now and the importance of them and working alongside. So my chapter's all around co-curation and accessibility, so it's working with disabled artists on projects. So when they brought me on board, there was two shows that have just been on in Philadelphia. The second show, which was only on for a month, was called Look Everywhere, and
Hmm.
that was a show of 33 artists working out of 30 progressive art studios across America. So for that, it was like one artist from every studio, or from 30 studios, not every studio because there's so many studios, but
Yeah.
lots of studios that I was aware of, or some that people had told me about, which were completely new to me. And then there was three other artists that I wanted to add in who have sadly passed away. And even if I'd already selected an artist from their studio, I wanted them to be included because they're quite important artists and they've made like waves within this world. And that was
Hmm.
Judith Scott from Creative Growth.
Hmm.
It was Helen Ray from Tierra del Sol and Walter Meeker from Pure Vision Arts. So they
Yeah.
were like my three extras. And then with the other artists, for me, it was really important to show like a really big breadth of like really quite well-known artists working out of studios like Dan Miller, Creative Growth, Marlon
Yeah.
Mullen from IAD, Simone Johnson from Pure Vision, does
Yeah.
the cats,
The
versus like
Bodega Cats. Yeah.
the
They're
Bodega
brilliant. They're just
versus
brilliant.
like much smaller studios where people might not have even ever heard of the studio, let alone any of their artists. And if I didn't know those studios, I spent loads of time going through their website, looking through each of their artists to select which one like I had an affinity with, which one was I
Hmm.
drawn to from those lists, and then working with each of those studios to get the work together in Philadelphia, or loaning works from people that might have had them, which were closer on the East Coast to save like shipping things over from the West Coast. And when we had the opening, it was really wonderful because like artists came down from Chicago, from New York, like people were actively coming to see their work in the space. And for me, that's really important and a really big reason why we should do these shows for artists to see their work in these spaces. So that was really beautiful, and I created a film to go alongside that show because something that's really important for me is the artists having a voice, whether that's verbal or non-verbal. Like they should be having a voice and giving a platform to have that voice. So this film that I made for that particular exhibition has some of the artists talking about their work personally, or it has just you're watching someone in the exhibition just drawing if they're non-verbal, and then some of the directors are speaking about the importance of progressive art studios and why they exist today. So that was a really beautiful show that happened and just felt really special. And especially when there's all these Medicaid cuts that are potentially happening and like lots
Yeah.
of the studios are going to have massive cuts, like it felt like a really big moment to be like, look at this amazing work that's coming out of these spaces that we might soon lose. And like, what can we do to raise awareness of these studios?
Yeah.
And then the second show, which ends on the 13th of December, is called Look Here, which falls under the broader
Okay. Yeah.
show of Look Here. So that was the show that I co-curated with two disabled artists. So when they brought me on board and said, would you like to curate this show? In England, I co-curated a show with a disabled artist the year before called Kaleidoscopic Realms. And for
Yeah.
me, that two-way learning that you get with that disabled artist and them being empowered to make decisions, which very, very rarely happens in these situations, felt really important. So the second exhibition is six artists selected from Centre for Creative Works, which
Okay.
is a sported studio in
Hmm.
Philadelphia. But it was selected by myself and two of their artists with developmental disabilities. So we selected the artists together. We then selected the works together. But also the artists from the studio were involved in that process, which again for me is really important. So it wasn't just us making those decisions. It was like Alan Yu, who was in the show, being involved, or Cindy, who is a blind artist that does really incredible wrapped works. We put all of the works out so Cindy could feel all these pieces that she's made in the past to help us whittle them down to a smaller number of them. And what was a really beautiful moment in that show was there was an artist included called Kelly Brown, who is deaf and blind, and she communicates through tactile sign, where someone will sign something and she'll hold their hands to understand what they're saying, and then she'll sign something back to them. So the way we involved Kelly was to ask her a series of questions like, what are your favorite colors? Would you like some sparkly work in this show? Do you want something really heavily textured or more smooth? So we whittled them down that way. And then the person that supports us said, like, in order to choose between two, let's put them out so Kelly can feel them. And the way that she felt them was she threw them over her face and felt them against her face. And it was such a beautiful moment to
Yeah.
watch. So for me, it was really important that we would work with the artists on their own terms, in their own ways, to involve them. Once we had then selected the works, um, when it came to kind of then hanging the show and planning the space, the two artists that we worked with were really good at doing things visually. So we would cut cardboard pieces of cardboard out to the size of the framed work and put an image of the work on it. And we were lucky enough to have access to the space when it was empty.
Hmm.
So me, Paige, and Mary went into the space with this, and I would then be moving them around the space, like putting them up, hanging them lower. And Mary was like, I want to see it in a triangle. I want to see it in a straight line. I want to see it like this. And we would actively move them around the space till they were comfortable with how they looked and did they like this here? And this is going to sit on a shelf. What do we think about this? So it's a really lovely way to do it. And that's something I will carry forward if I ever work with disabled artists in that way again, because that
Hmm.
way visually, for them seeing it visually when you're in the space, like just
Yeah.
worked wonders. Because we did have a scale model, and I think it's just not quite the same as like actively seeing it in front of you than seeing it really small scale.
Yeah.
And then once we'd kind of planned it on the walls, it was like, here's a bunch of wall colors. What paint color do we think is going to work here? And then talking about the artwork, like why they were drawn to particular things. And I kept writing down words that kept coming up over and over again. So then I pulled together some wall text based on these words and the language that they would use rather than using like really complicated language, which I wouldn't use anyway. We were
Mhm.
using the words that they would use. So there was words like pizzazz, rainbow colors. It reminds me of a piñata exploding. Like all of
Yes.
this is in the wall text, which just
Yeah.
makes it so much more accessible to
Right.
all audiences, not just
Right.
artists. Like it was really fun wall text that was checked every step of the way. Like with the artist, do you get this? Does this make sense to you? Do you know what I mean when I say this? So they were involved in like every moment of it to the point that when that exhibition opened, we gave a talk all together to like nearly 300 people in a room about how we selected this exhibition and how it came about. And it was just a really fun moment of them chatting and them sharing things in their own way. And it was just amazing. It was really incredible.
That's
And then the
so
symposium.
beautiful. Yeah.
Um, I didn't organize the symposium. I was just one of the speakers, but the symposium was the fourth element of the exhibit of the kind of program, which brought together staff from all the different progressive studios, or staff that kind of work in the learning departments or the community departments in like MoMA and places, right down to like a the keynote speech was like Tom DeMaria, who is the ex director of creative growth,
Hmm.
Matthew Higgs from White Columns, who is so incredibly supportive of this field, David Fearman, who's just set up a gallery and an art fair, who's based in New York, that supports this kind of world, Alex from Fleischer Ullman Gallery, who's the director there, and then a curator from MoMA because of Marlon Mullen's show that was in MoMA.
Yeah.
So that was a really beautiful and really interesting and rich conversation that formed part of the symposium.
Just thinking, talking to Tom DeMaria a couple of years ago at the Outsider Art Fair, I remember him speaking about how he kind of had to fight to get into the Outsider Art Fair a couple of, like years ago, right? And I think now, was it last year or 2 years ago? It was the 50th anniversary. That was the curated show. So
Mhm.
the progressive art studios, which for anybody that doesn't really know, I guess what the definition of that would be a studio that works with intellectual or developmental disability artists. But that's, I feel like, are usually kind of some of the most exciting booths,
Um,
not to call anybody out, but like the most exciting booths at the Outsider Art Fair. But I do want to know, I mean, like when you go to either exhibits or museums, like one thing that you feel like they could do, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head there with like getting the artist involved. Like that
mhm.
would be one thing. But what is something that you see maybe when you go to shows that you think maybe we're doing a really pretty good job of being inclusive, but here's one thing we're missing, or here's another thing that we could do to help further that even more.
Um, I think they could do a lot more. Not one thing. Um,
Sure.
the
Well,
thing with
hey, we got time. My kids are out of the house, and I've got this beautiful lighting that I'm now like in. So
no,
what do we got?
coming in. Um, the thing, another part of the work that I do is like I'm really passionate about access and inclusion. And I'm really passionate about people with lots of different lived experiences and different needs and requirements being able to kind of access spaces, but also access it again on their own terms. So, like,
Mhm.
why aren't we seeing sign language videos about all of the major shows that you go to in museums and galleries when really it's not that expensive to create a sign language video? And like, if you have a captioned sign language video, it means that deaf and hard of hearing people will feel really welcomed into your
Mhm.
spaces, or like having Braille. Like there's an organization in America whose name has gone out my brain, but they will provide museums and galleries with free Braille to have in their exhibitions.
Yeah.
Like it's not even going to cost you a penny. You just send them some text or like the main headline text from your exhibition, and they will do it in Braille so that you can have it available for people to use in your space. And again, that's another way for people to access it on their own terms. Or with the exhibitions that I do, the Philadelphia ones, the Nottingham show, I had like a touch table or touch panels,
Mm.
which, yes, they're great for blind and visually impaired visitors, but like, who doesn't want to touch the material in an
Right.
exhibition?
Right. Right.
You want to touch that. You want to be like, oh my God, that looks really tactile or squishy. Like, what does it feel like? Touch the touch piece
Yeah.
instead. You're not going to get in trouble then, and it's there for you to be able to engage with it. So, like, it's really lovely to have these things available. That doesn't cost money. Like, if you're
Hmm.
providing a bit of material or a bit of crackle glaze or something, so people can feel what that glaze is like that is free. Like,
Hmm.
literally do a test piece, put it on the wall, put it on a touch table. So, I
Yeah.
really wish that people like would embed more of this into their spaces. And I've actually spent the last 3 to 4 years working with the Plus Tate network in the UK, which is like 48 of the largest visual arts organizations in the UK. And I've been working with Triple C, which is a disability arts organization, alongside people with different lived experiences of disability. And we've been having these online meetings with these galleries and museums and taking some issues that they might face of working with deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent people with a very solutions focused approach. And we've now created this creative access toolkit, which, like, there is now no excuse why you don't do these things. Like,
Right.
it's written down in plain English for you to follow, for you to understand what you need to do to make your spaces more accessible, and like even down to like the height that you hang things at.
Yeah.
Like when we just hung the Philadelphia show, like I hang at what's called an accessible hanging height, which is suitable for everyone. It's not too low, it is an accessible hanging height. And so we hung the Philadelphia show at that height. It's 6 inches lower, which is quite a lot. 6 inches
Hmm.
lower than the
Yeah.
average hang in a museum and gallery. No one complained it was too
Right.
low.
Right. Right.
And it's only when you pointed it out to them and you're like, just so you're aware, and they're like, oh, really? And you're like, yeah, but this is why it's important to do this because it doesn't look too low. It just looks like a
Hmm.
normal hanging height, but it means it's better for people that might be in mobility equipment or wheelchair users. It's much better for them because they're not cranking their neck up to try and
Right.
look at something.
Right.
It's more of like an even height for everyone. And that comes down to like the height of plinths and things like plinths should only be a certain height to allow people to have the same view. And you said like what is like one thing that's like really important that I wish galleries and museums did. And this came from working with Christopher Samuel, who's a British artist who's a wheelchair user. And he co-curated a show in Nottingham with me. And I've been to many exhibitions with him because I work with him quite a lot. And when you go into a museum or gallery space and you go and look at like a video, on a screen, they always put the bench directly in front of the screen so that if anyone is a wheelchair user or has mobility equipment, they have to have this like angled view from the side,
Mm.
which means like they're never getting the same view as an able-bodied person who's able to
Hmm.
sit on those seats. So like what we did in Nottingham, what we've done in Philadelphia, what I really try and express to people now is like, can you angle the bench slightly to one side so that a wheelchair user can pull up next to you and have that same view that you get of that screen? And that is something that's like stayed with me from visiting these spaces with Christopher and from him expressing that in Nottingham. Like that's a really simple thing that people can do, just like angle your bench slightly
Yeah.
so that there's this equitable view for everybody of that screen. That's not
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to. It's just, yeah, it all makes like too much sense. And do you think though that it is part? I don't know. I would hope. I'm not naive to think that it's not, but like I hope it's not maliciousness. Like, do you think it's just laziness? Do you think it's this art world we still? It's highfalutin. We need it to be. It's like, oh, we've always done it this way. Like, why do you think though that it is just these
I
little tiny
think,
things? Because I would say if I went to an opening the other night and I was in and I was out, it was fine. But like if they use words like pizzazz or if I could touch things, like I would have been there way
yeah,
longer and then I would have like come back the next day with my kids. So like, why do you think this is?
I think it comes down to partly, I think it is like we've always done this, and like no one's probably ever said it. Like maybe a few people might have raised it. So I think it comes down to this is what we've always done. But I don't think it's done maliciously. I think it comes down to if you haven't been with a wheelchair user in that space and if you haven't seen it done differently anywhere else, it almost doesn't cross your mind. And if you don't have like a disability steering group that is like
Hmm.
there when you're putting the exhibitions on to raise that kind of information, which is also something I tell people you should set the steering group up and they should be involved from the outset of your discussions of
Hmm.
exhibitions. If they don't have something like that and they've never been in the space and they've never watched someone interact with the space in that way, I think it's not laziness, it's just they don't know any different. They've never seen anything different, which is why this toolkit now exists, which is why I try and have these conversations and be like, just do these little things, and it goes so far to
Hmm.
showing people with different needs and requirements that you're willing to change things to make it more accessible for them so that they can access it on the same terms as everybody else.
Hmm. Yeah,
And also, some people are set in their ways. And I think it's very difficult to push back to people that are older who might have done this for years. And it's very much like, no, this is how it's done. And it's always been this way. And I'm never going to change. And you're like, I will never change you. But let's speak to these younger curators that are coming through that might be more
totally.
progressive, that might be like, I get you. That makes total sense. Like, hit them when they're young so that
Hmm.
they then embed that for future years.
Yeah, I again, it's just the this conversation has helped me in thinking now of other shows if I'm going to do like these little things that I can do differently, and so I can't thank you enough for like your continuing champion of for these artists and just for these very again small subtle changes that could be made that could make somebody as life and their time in an exhibit that much better.
Mhm.
So thank you. I want to switch gears slightly. You've got two beautiful, brilliant pieces behind you, and you've talked about how you got to spend time with John Ullman in his house and his collection, which I'm even more jealous of you. But you were so kind to include me in a fantastic series that you do called Meet the Collector, which I think you've done like 70 or 80 now. Like, are you up to 100 yet?
No, I think I'm at 74. I'm kind of winding it down,
Okay.
and my plan is hopefully to make them into a book.
Yeah.
Um, my thing with the meet, so it's Meet the Collector, so it's people who collect outsider folk art, self-taught art, like this kind of realm that we kind of
Hmm.
exist. And I started it off because like I get to meet these really incredible people often or have conversations with them. And I wanted to, it's like a few reasons. Like I want to show that like collectors aren't as scary as maybe artists might
Yeah.
think.
Sure.
First and foremost, I mean, some of them are quite scary,
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
not
yeah.
all of them. Like to break down this hierarchy that exists, I guess, to show like if you think about some of the greats of the outsider and art brew worlds, um, lots of that work is in people's collections now, and unless it's very rare that that work's going to come back to market. So
Hmm.
when a lot of these people kind of are gifting their work to museums and things now, I think it's very rare we're going to see collectors in the future with collections like these collectors have now because this
Yeah.
work just isn't available to the standard of some of the pieces that these people have in their collections. So for me, again, it's really important. It's like a historical thing. Like we're documenting this like really incredible moment in history where people have these beautiful collections of the most incredible art around.
Hmm.
Um, and I find it fascinating the way that they display it. Like John Ullman is someone who's quite sparse in his house, and everything is kind of quite spread out, and like it's not a floor to ceiling as some of them
Sure.
are. There's people like John Ullman who's more sparse. There's also a guy called David Walaga, who sits on the board of Intuit, and he pairs contemporary artists with outsider art brew in
Oh,
his house and has them sat, again, quite paired back, but has them sat alongside each other as one and the same. And
fascinating.
that's a
Yeah.
really beautiful setup. And then on the opposite end of the scale, you go to someone like Monty Blanchard and Chase House in New York, who live in a loft space, and it is floor to ceiling of like the most incredible art that
Yeah.
you'll come across. And they know exactly who it is, where they bought it from. Like the tours that Monty does are just absolutely fascinating. And every room looks the same with this floor to ceiling house hung. And many of the collectors do that. And I do love that.
Yeah.
I love both sides of it. When they're like more spread out, you get to really look at the art more and pay attention to it. And when it's like full on, you're like, oh my God, I don't know where to look because there's just
Yeah.
so incredible things everywhere and it's so much to take in all at the same time. And Jesus Christ, that's amazing. But stop that. And oh
Yeah.
my God. So I love them both for different reasons. But that's why I also love doing the interviews because people get to see that. They get to see how
Yeah.
people live with this art in their house. Like they
Yeah.
and live with it. They live with it. Like it's
Right.
amazing. And
It's
then
like
and
the
then the third, just to mention the
no,
third
yeah,
type
yeah.
of curator, collector, sorry, is like someone like Victor Keane, who's based in Philadelphia, or John Horseman, who's based in St. Louis. They are people who, like, yes, they'll have some work in their house, but they've now taken over another space.
Hmm.
Like Victor Keane has a space in
That's right.
Philadelphia, like a museum,
That's
and
right.
he
Yeah.
hung much of his collection and has it open to the public to go and look at that work. And John Horseman has it all hung a bit like a museum against white
Hmm.
walls, and you get given like a plan with what everything is when you walk into the space. And his hope is like he has a lot of curators coming through those spaces so that then they'll loan work from his collection to put into shows. And for me, that's really
Yeah.
important. He has some exceptional works. He's only been recently been collecting outside of self-taught work, kind of in the last year now, maybe. But has like he has to buy like museum quality works by the artist that he's collecting, and only one or two pieces by those artists, so that when they're loaned out to museums, he's like, this is an exceptional piece, and
Hmm.
you should have it hanging in your museum for whatever group show that you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's basically a museum that we will never, most normal people will not have access to. So,
Yeah.
like, for you to see that, and I should mention on your website, and I'll put a link to it. You can go see photos and hear these collectors talk about
Yeah.
these pieces. So, this is probably an insane question. You've done over 70 of these. Is there one piece by one artist or that you walked into a collection and you were just like, whole, like, how does this exist? How am I seeing this? Is there one or two pieces that have stuck out to you in that way?
I don't know
Or at least
because
that
there's,
you can recall. Again,
yeah,
I know
I
you've
mean, I
seen
can
so
recall a
much.
lot of them. I find it really exciting if I go into someone's space and I see something they bought from me and I see
Mm,
how it fits in their house, like how they.
yeah.
That's always nice.
Yeah, like what
Um,
they put it next to and where,
yeah,
yeah, like what
yeah,
room it's in and
that's that. I mean, most of them don't buy from me. Most because I don't
oh,
sell like traditional outsider artists that they might
sure.
have. So I don't sell like the historical artists. So it's quite rare that these collectors actually buy from me, which is why I also find it interesting to see what they've got. But I think some of the most interesting stories when I speak to collectors is when, for example, Michael Noland, who lives,
Hmm.
um, I'm having a mental block where he lives
Illinois
now.
area, right? Chicago
Yeah,
or
Illinois area, yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, outside Chicago. And when you go to his house, and he's met some of the artists, some of the greats of the
Yeah.
artists, and he has like all of these amazing books of photos when he met them and stuff. And like some of his favorite artists are, I'm going to blank on this now. Now I want to share this story. I'm like, oh my God, who?
Well, I think he's an Ohio-ish guy.
Martin Ramirez
Yeah.
and the guy William
Well, he's got
Hawkins.
photos with William Hawkins. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
he has, so when you're talking to him, like he could never afford these works.
Hmm.
He's maybe not got as much money as some of the other collectors. And what he's done now in order to get some of those works in his collection are do lots of the collectors do trades and switches and stuff. And in order for him to now get some of those pieces, he's done swaps and trades. So he now has some of that work, and he might have given up like four works
Yeah.
in order to get this one work. But he wanted that one work because he might have a photo of William Hawkins
Hmm.
holding that particular work. And
Yep.
now he has that work in his collection. And for me,
Right.
like that's a really magical moment. And it's like you could see how important it was to him to get that work and
Yeah.
how much, like, because he'd taken that photo of William Hawkins with that work, he was like, that was really important to him. And you can see why. So there's moments like that I think are really beautiful. And when you go to the
Totally.
house, who also lived just outside Chicago, Jim and Beth, they also had these really beautiful relationships with different artists, one being Howard Finster. So they
Hmm.
have an incredible collection of Howard Finster work from across the years. But when they started to visit Howard Finster, they just had a baby. And so Howard Finster has dedicated so much of this work over the years to their son. And you can see
Wow.
the son growing up in Howard Finster's pictures, like he's a baby in some, and then he's a little child in some, and he always names him in the pictures. And it's really beautiful to see that
Yeah.
relationship that grew over time each time that they met him. And again, they have these really lovely photos of those times that they met him and with their son, and like, and now their son is also obsessed with this art, Matt. So it's just there's really beautiful stories like that that stay with you
Yeah.
when you speak to these collectors. I mean, there's so many wonderful stories that people tell me about some of the artists that they met
Hmm.
or how scary Lee Goldie was, all sorts of
Oh,
things.
really?
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not heard that one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So there's just it's just amazing.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely fascinating, and I feel really privileged that I get to speak to these people and share their stories further, and
Yeah.
share, like I said, their collections with the world because I think they're really incredible collections that people need to see.
100%. Yeah. And again, the photos and stories are on your website. Go check those out. I love like people like Michael Nolan because he will like comment on a picture that I post of like Hawkins. He's like, I watched Hawkins paint that in 1981 or whatever. I'm just like, this is the best. I love those guys telling those stories. Well, one artist that I'm sure you've seen works in some of these guys' collections, and I would be remiss if I did not ask you about Mr. Shinichi Sawada. I've got your book back here that now, again, knowing that you're a graphic designer makes way more sense that I believe you made this, published this yourself, right?
Yes.
But I want to know, again, his work is one that has always stayed with me when I first saw his work, and then you, in partnership, I believe it was with James Cohen Gallery a couple years ago, did a brilliant exhibit of all his works. Could you tell me a little bit about either your first meeting with him, but going to meet him? He lives in Japan, and I
Mhm.
believe like on the side of a mountain, and a nonverbal artist. But could you tell me a little bit about your experiences and your time with the one and only, forgive me if I'm not saying it right, Shinichi Sawada?
So Sawada, I first saw his work in Lausanne at the Art Brut collection there, and they were going to do a show called Japan, which showed some different outsider self-taught artists from Japan. And this was maybe 2000 and I want to say 2009. I've got the book like over there in front of me, and I can't think when it was now. 2008,
We'll go with
2009.
that.
And when I went to visit them, the show hadn't opened yet, but they had all the work like there, like behind the scenes. And I was like, I must go and see this.
Yeah.
So I got to go behind the scenes and see this work. And I saw Sawada's work there, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is absolutely.
Yeah.
It might have been 2007 because I was at university, so it probably was 2007. And I was like, oh my God, what's this? Like, this is sensational. So I started to learn about him then, and then in 2013 in England, we had a big show at the Wellcome Collection in London, which was called Suzu Outsider Art from Japan. And it had so many incredible Japanese art brew artists
Hmm.
from all different studios and walks of life in Japan. And it's very rare to get good press for this kind of work in the UK, but it had so many good press pieces. I visited the show a few times. I got to meet some people in Japan that worked with all these different artists. So this is how I started to get to know them. And then at the time, I was working for this charity, and this charity was based in a modern British art gallery in Chichester on the south coast. And so I organized a show called Intuitive Folk. And there was two Japanese artists and two British artists. And Sawada was one of the
Hmm.
Japanese artists alongside Abata, who I also work with. So we had some of his work, put it into that show alongside these two British artists. And as that was going on and as the conversations continue, what's really important when you work with the Japanese studios is like this building of trust.
Sure.
Like, I am a total outsider to them. They have no idea who I am. I'm from England. Like, I'm interested in this work. With Sawada in particular, so many people over the years, because also in 2013, I should say his work was in the Venice Biennale,
That's right. Yeah.
front and center in the Venice Biennale. And that's how many contemporary people got to know his work. So since that moment, so many people were contacting his studio, like, I want to work with this person. Who is it? Like, we have to have it. And the studio became really weary of that and really protective of their artists, especially of Sawada, and were like, no, who are you? Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Are you going to take advantage of this person? So over that time since I saw it in 2007, let's say, and then onwards from that, I kind of built this relationship up with a few different people in Japan, and then through the studio as well to get to know them. I then did this show showing some of his work. His work then went into a show that I was part of called Radical Craft, which was a touring show
Hmm.
of incredible work made by people outside of the mainstream that toured around several different museums in England. It was a beautiful show. And his work, we had three works in that. And again, carrying on the conversations with the studio. So when I set up my gallery in 2017, they contacted me and they were like, "We've heard that you're setting up this space. Would you like to be the first person to sell Sawada's work?" And I was like, "Yes, please."
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think because I come from the background of working at this charity supporting these artists, but also when I was kind of setting up my gallery and stuff, I've also worked in a day centre. So I've worked one-to-one with people. In England, we say learning disabled artists, but I know that means something very different in America, but it basically means developmentally
Yeah.
disabled artists. So I was working in a day centre with these, they're not just artists, it was just like a day centre for disabled people. I was doing a lot of one-to-one work with them, lots of personal care. So I come at things from a very different headspace. I have this very strong kind of care side of me. I'm very empathetic. So I cry at everything. I get very invested in people,
Yeah.
and um, I also like because I worked with people with schizophrenia as well. Like I really come at things from like I'm not like I'm money, money, money. I have to make money. I'm only in this
Yeah.
for money. Like I come at it like hopefully it comes across this way. Like I'm
No,
a very
I
caring person and I'm trying to do it because I really see incredible things in these works and I want people to see it and I want people to appreciate it in the way it should be appreciated. Like,
mhm.
yes, they have some form of a disability, but do you love the art? Is the art
Right.
saying something to you? Let's first and foremost look at the art. What do you
Yep.
think of the to me, the art, I have to work with artists that I feel passionate about because I have to speak about the art and I have to love the art and it has to say something to me in
Hmm.
order to kind of get that across. So Sawada's work, I'm just absolutely fascinated with. So when they approach me, I think they've approached me because of that approach that I have, given that so many big galleries approached them and they said no to them to the
Hmm.
point that when I first took his work in 2018 to the Outsider Art Fair in New York, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, this is Sawada's work, it's for sale." And obviously sold quite a lot of it. But some of the bigger galleries were like, "Well, why have you got this work? Like, you're a nobody. You don't deserve to have this work.
It's
And how
so
did you get
bizarre.
it when, like, you don't even have a gallery space? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, "I hear what you're saying. However,
Yeah.
I do come at it from a different headspace, and that seems to be what the studio appreciates. And like, I have built trust up with them for a very long time. Like, it's not just
Hmm.
not nobody that's approached them. For years and years, I've been speaking to them and building that trust. And the fact that I've been over now, I've met Sawada 3 times. And like you said, he is a non-verbal. He'll say a few things, but you couldn't have a conversation with him. So he might say a few odd words. He'll say hello to you. But he is a non-verbal artist. He is autistic. He's very much about routine. But he creates these sensational things. And to be able, for me, what's important with the artist is to have that relationship. I want them to know who I am, even if it's like very surface level, like they've seen my face a few
Hmm.
times. When I go back to see Sawada, you know that he's recognizing you and he's like, "Oh, hi," and then carrying on working. Like he's so dedicated to what he's doing. But it's really important that I have that relationship. And I don't just want to be someone like, "Oh, yeah, I work with this person, and they don't know who I am, and I don't have conversations or understand." Like, I want to really understand who are you? Why are we here? What do you want to get out of this? So whenever I go over there, yes, we spend time with Sawada, but I also spend time with the people who run the studio to really understand it because the rest of that studio don't create work like Sawada.
Mm.
There's 2 other artists that make ceramics. I do have one of those other artists, Contini, and then the other one just makes really small pieces. But nobody else is recognized in that studio the way that Sawada is recognized. And much of their production really is inside his the space where he is. There's a bakery. So you might have
Hmm.
read that Sawada in the mornings would like bake bread. So he was
Yeah.
taught how to bake bread, and several other people there make baked products. They make really beautiful like cakes, pastries, and things. And then in the afternoon, some of the other people in the studio will go out and sell the cakes in the community or sell the bread or whatever. And then other times in the studio, they pack bits of pipe into boxes and things. They're quite mundane things, but in Japan, in order to kind of get your benefit money, you have to do some sort of job.
Right.
In order to get, as if you're able to, then you have to do some sort of job. So packing bits of pipe into boxes for companies that pay the organization to do that, or like shredding paper, or something that to us might not seem very exciting. But
Sure.
actually, some of the people there, they love shredding paper. Like it's a
Yeah.
really exciting thing to do. So it's a really interesting setup in Japan. And Sawada now doesn't work in the bakery anymore. He now is packing the boxes.
Okay.
Um, and what's really lovely for people that doesn't know his work, so his ceramics are wood fired. So they don't have a kiln, and where he works isn't in the main building. So when he first started going to the studio, about 20 years ago, and he's still quite young, he's only in his early 40s, so he's been going there
Hmm.
quite a long time. Here, they started him off with sashiko textiles, which is traditional Japanese textiles. And there's three in existence, and they're all kind of there proudly presented alongside this massive display cabinet of Sawada's work when you walk in. So they're very proud of Sawada in this institution, and like he's been in the New York Times, that is very proudly displayed inside the institution.
As they should be proud. Yeah.
So he started off doing that and like other odd bits and pieces, but they said that they saw that he really loved doing things with his hands, but wasn't really loving the stitching. So there was this guy there called Mr. Ikitani, who sadly now has dementia. I mean, he was in his 90s. And he's worked with Sawada since the beginning. And he worked in clay. And he was like, let's try him with a bit of clay. And his first pieces were like really small little pieces, little frogs. I actually have a little frog. So really basic, very simple things. And they were like, right, it looks like he really loves using this material. So you get in a car and you travel up into the mountains in Shiga, and you're surrounded by rice fields, and it's all gated. And then you kind of
Hmm.
come across this sheet metal shack, for want of a better word. But there's no windows or doors. You move this piece of metal to the side to get into this thing. It's very ramshackle.
Which I would say, if I'm going to visit an artist, that's kind of what I want to see. Like, I don't, I don't want to like go to this fancy building. Like, I kind of want to like crawl up the side of
It's
a hill and like
yeah,
move a
it's
piece of
just that.
metal. So,
And then so Mr. Ikitani has built two kilns there, hand-built kilns, and they're for wood firing. So he chops down the wood as well. So you have to get so much wood to do it because for the brown pieces, they have to be kept at 1,200 degrees for 3 days, 3 full days, day
right.
and night. And then for the black one, it's slightly lower temperature, but again, wood fired. And so these firings only happen twice a year because it's a really old Shiga, traditional to the area where it's based. It's a really old Shiga technique, but it's like a really beautiful celebratory moment. So it only happens twice a year, and also it costs quite a lot to get all this firewood to kind of cut it down and keep it there. So twice a year they put the kilns on, and Mr. Kitani, when he was able to do it, would go up there with his friends, and they would sit and take it in turns to have a nap and like sit around a fire and like drink and eat and be this lovely 3 day celebration.
Yeah.
And then it takes a week for them to cool down, and then you take the work out. And because he is a self-taught ceramicist, like he was taught how to coil around newspaper. So he was taught very simple techniques, and then all these creatures and weird and wonderful things have come out, not through looking at any books or having anything in the studio, but from his imagination and things
Right.
he's perhaps seen around when he's been walking around Japan, where he lives with his family or something. So all these incredible weird things come out. And some of them, as I say, break in the kiln, or like he hasn't attached the leg properly and it's fallen off. But what you'll notice with his work is that they're all different colors depending on where they're placed in the kiln. So some might be like a really quite a dark brown on one side, but very pale on the other
Mm.
side. And some of them look quite shiny in places, and there's no glaze ever
Right.
used. It's how the ash crystallizes on the surface of the clay that creates this really beautiful kind of sheen, that you'll see in some pieces, and really unusual coloring. So they're really beautiful, unusual ceramics that, haven't got in a kiln, aren't traditional. They're very traditional to the area. So they feel very special, and not many are made every year.
Hmm.
Like, yes, he might make more, but they only ever fire twice a year. So there's only so many that can fit into these small kiln spaces. Um, and what I really love when I watch him making is he'll always get like an older piece and place it, or sometimes two or three, and place them on the side next to him when he's working. So he's very methodical. He goes in, he washes his hands, he gets all his materials out. Everything's placed really beautifully, really
Yeah.
serene, very quiet. And then sometimes he'll place these finished pieces next to him. And I kind of see it like they're friends, like, because sometimes it's just him and Mr. Ikitani there, and it's like, are they your spectators? Are they like your friends? Like, why are they there? But I like to think they're his friends. Or sometimes like he'll be working on one, but it looks very similar to the one that is put next to him. So sometimes there's a few designs that have very similar elements because he might have been like looking at that and thinking, oh, I like what I did there, and oh yeah, that bit
Hmm.
looks good, and I'll do that again. But I just love the way that they're placed next to him, and it's him placing, nobody else puts them there. It's you watch him and he will go and place them there. And then even when he stops for lunch, he packs everything away, clears everything up, sits and eats his lunch in a slightly different part of the studio, and then comes back and gets it all out again. And that would be his autistic part of his brain
Sure.
coming in like, this is how I work. Everything's clean, everything's set away. And watching him work, he has these really long, beautiful, delicate fingers. And it's so beautiful watching him work and carefully placing them and making these little spikes and placing them onto the body. And it's just, could sit and watch him for hours.
Yeah.
And he's not bothered, like he's not talking to you. And I'm just sat there going, oh my God, this is just so
I
beautiful.
can't, yeah, can't believe
And then
this is
like, we
happening.
need to go now. Like, you can't just sit and watch him all day. I was like, that's fine.
But
Okay.
why? Please, I would. The one thing I read about in your book too, and I hate to like kind of compare artist to artist because they are all their own beautiful and individual. But like, I couldn't help but think of Judas Scott when I think I read in your book like he would finish a piece and then just kind of like push it away and
Yeah,
be
like
like,
Judy
"We're
Scott.
done."
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you very
no,
much.
like, look at what I did. Like, hey, this is
Yeah.
amazing. Just like, there it is. I'm done, and it's
And
gone
on
and
to the
on to the
next
next
one.
one.
Yeah. So he very much, that is it. Like, it's finished, and then he'll put it, there's a shelf where like finished works goes. And when he had finished with it, he moves it to that shelf, and then they're left to dry out for 6 months. And then he'll very much be straight onto the next piece. Like, no standing around, no like, that was amazing. It's like, what am I going to make now?
Yeah,
Which is very
it's
much like Judah Scott. Like, thank you very much. See you later. What's next?
absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough, Jennifer, for your time. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I've absolutely adored talking to you as I always do, and I know you're probably going to be like in New York, you'll be in LA, you'll be all over the place, Texas in the next few months. But I will see you hopefully right in March at the Outside Art Fair again.
We just need to talk about this artist that has this terrible light spotting
Please.
right now. But
Yeah.
this is Naina Kalu, for anyone that isn't aware. Naina Kalu is a British artist who works out of Action Space. And she is the first learning disabled, meaning developmental disabled. So she's autistic and she's mostly nonverbal. She's the first artist like that to ever be up for the Turner Prize in the UK, which is
Amazing.
absolutely incredible. The Turner Prize, every year, for contemporary artists are up for this prize. And it's like a really high accolade in the UK to be up for the Turner Prize. And so it feels like a really monumental moment that's happening right now. And it gets announced on the 9th of December who the winner is. So everything is crossed for Naina. But Naina makes these incredible, huge drawings, often in pairs, and she'll work on them at the same time. So she'll make a mark on one, then she'll make pretty much the same mark on the second drawing, and then changes her material, and then does it again and again. And she'll work on them for about 2 days, and then they're finished and a new one is started. And I've known Naina now since like 2012. I've put her in so many different shows, and she also makes these really incredible wrapped pieces. But she always has this kind of repetitive circular motion that comes into her work. So her wrapped pieces all have things wrapped again in the circular motion. So where the exhibition is on in England, in Bradford at the moment, it's until like February. She has a whole room dedicated to her work of these wrapped and drawn
Oh,
pieces, and they're
good.
absolutely sensational. And she is such an incredible artist. I love spending time with Naina, and she has so much energy and loves all bright colors and is always dressed in bright colors, has fabulous nails. So I just want to raise awareness of Naina because, like Marlon Mullen having the show at MoMA at the end of last year, beginning of 2025, it's like a really important moment. Like these artists are like finally now we are seeing
Mm-hmm.
them having these incredible shows in museums and galleries, being seen as artists in their own right and not being sidelined, not being put into education spaces or community spaces. Like this is important. These are artists. They deserve the same spaces, the same care and attention as everybody else. And can we please have more of this, please? Like, come
Please.
on,
Yeah,
please.
absolutely. Well, thank you. Well, fingers crossed, December 9th, we will hope for Nana to get that Turner Prize. That's fantastic. Again, Jennlifer, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. Again, that show, the Look Everywhere show, and the continued work that you do to kind of bring awareness and inclusivity, which we still got light years to go. But with your help, it keeps getting better and better. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It is in my humble opinion that some of the best artworks are the ones that stick with you and often make you audibly let out a four-letter word that some might deem inappropriate. Those are the artworks that can make you travel through time. These works that sit right in front of you today in this universe, yet they look and feel like they could be found thousands and thousands of years ago, created by civilizations from a bygone era. Or maybe they could be found in a futuristic time and place where self-driving cars actually exist. And despite AI advances, the real ones are still making real things, real art with their full mind, body, and soul. I would put Shinichi Sawada's brilliant clay creatures in this category. Years ago, from the moment I first laid eyes on them in New York City at the Outsider Art Fair, thanks to Jennlifer Gilbert, I will never forget these incredibly unique, beautifully haunting, and one-of-a-kind works of art. Shinichi Sawada was born in 1982 in Atsu City, nestled in Japan's Shiga Prefecture. As a young child in nursery school, teachers noticed that he struggled with social interaction and often communicated by simply echoing the words of others. But at home, another side of him was quietly emerging as Sawada showed an early, instinctive pull toward making things. He would carefully fold the empty packaging from his father's cigarette packs as though it were origami paper, transforming it into tiny handmade objects. Soon, even candy wrappers became raw material for the universe he was creating inside his mind. As he grew older, Sawada attended several special schools where his teachers consistently remarked on the remarkable precision and quality of his artwork. When he was 15, a day trip introduced him to clay for the first time. There, he sculpted a small frog, likely inspired by an image he had seen in a book. Around the same time, he continued creating miniature paper vehicles at home, early versions of what would become his uniquely detailed style. In the year 2000, Sawada joined a social welfare center for people with intellectual disabilities, where he started engaging with the traditional Japanese art of decorative stitching. Very quickly, the staff recognized his talent and transitioned him into a facilities art studio, setting the stage for the extraordinary sculptural work he is known for today. It was at this time that Sawada first met Mr. Masaru Ikitani, a relationship that would quietly shape his artistic output for years to come. Beginning with simple traditional dishes and a few small animal figures, Sawada's early clay pieces looked nothing like the fantastical sculptures he's known for today. Working with Mr. Ikitani, his confidence grew and he started experimenting, using chopsticks and needles to carve intricate marks into clay. One of his first significant works was his own interpretation of the beloved Japanese raccoon dog statue, believed to bring good luck. Now in his 40s, Sawada has followed nearly the same daily rhythm for close to 2 decades. For years, his mornings were spent at the facility's bakery where he made bread, a skill encouraged by Japan's emphasis on helping people with disabilities learn practical crafts, and one that he genuinely enjoyed. In the afternoon, he was driven by Mr. Iketani to a small sheet metal hut tucked into the mountains and surrounded by fields. There, he works with clay in peaceful isolation. One of the most remarkable aspects of Sawada's ceramic work is not just the sculptures themselves, but the way they are brought to life through fire. Each piece is fired using a traditional Japanese method carried out in hand-built wood fires that sit beside the small mountain hut where he works. Twice a year, these ovens are ignited and tended to non-stop for 3 days and 3 nights. Wood is fed into the flames around the clock to keep the temperature soaring at 1200 degrees Celsius. After the firing, the oven must rest and cool for an entire week before the pieces can be removed, hoping they've survived the intense heat intact. This makes each sculpture through the bi-yearly celebration even more precious. Sawada's extraordinary ceramic creatures, rooted in myth, folklore, and his own boundless imagination, have captivated audiences around the globe. His work invites viewers into a strange and wondrous realm where beasts seem stitched together from dreams and ancient stories, creatures with bird talons and demon faces, octopus tentacles paired with stegosaurus-like spikes, beautifully haunting works that will be left with you for eternity. Those who have watched Sawada at work describe a quiet but striking confidence, as though he is simply revealing forms that already exist in his mind. Each new piece begins with a rough 3-dimensional shape formed from newspaper, which will burn away in the kiln, taking around 4 or 5 days to complete, and leaving behind a hollow-bodied creature ready to step into this magical world. Thank you to Jennlifer Gilbert for putting together this incredible book by Shinichi Sawada with tons of amazing, great photos of the artist at work. More information about Sawada, who continues to make these incredible sculptures today. And that's a wrap. The moral of this story: be more inclusive. Stop being lazy, museums and galleries. Jennlifer is a champion, and let's do what we can to make the art world a better place for everybody. So thank you again to Jennlifer for her time and for the incredible conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you to everyone for listening and for the feedback. When I started this 4 months ago, I knew it would be a lot of work, but I did not know how much fun that I would have and what the response would be. So again, I thank you. I really appreciate you. And if you haven't yet, please do me a favor and like, subscribe, leave a review, whatever you can do to help to get this little podcast in front of more people. It would mean the world to me. Be sure to follow Jennlifer on Instagram at Jennlifer Lauren Gallery. That's at J_L Gallery, where you can also go online and check out all of her amazing collector interviews that she's done over the years, over 70 some. I think number 69. I can't believe that I'm on that list with all the amazing collections, but I thank her again for that. And if you can, I would love to see you tonight at Mainframe Studios. Maybe I've already seen you there, depending on when you're listening to this. The first Friday event in Des Moines, Iowa, where you can support living artists, fill your home with some of the best self-taught artwork in the world. By some of my great friends. And until next time, this has been FolkArtwork and Friends. And thank you to Jason Brown for the FolkArtwork and Friends theme song and all the interstitials. So many great little ditties that he put together for me. I can't thank him enough. Go check out more original music from Jason at sapwood.bandcamp.com. Buy an album. Support folk musicians like Jason. Thank you again, friend. Can't thank you enough. You are the best.